The night settled over the savannah like a veil of ash. The ground, marked by thirst, seemed to hold its breath. Every crack held the memory of long-past rains. In the midst of this fragile expanse, a female elephant moved slowly forward. Her heavy steps left uneven indentations in the dry earth. Her swollen belly revealed the promise of new life. Yet this precious burden made her every movement more difficult. Every step was a struggle. Her ears flapped restlessly in the air, as if to ward off an invisible threat. Her trunk nervously felt its way around, inhaling the smells of the night, alert to the messages carried by the wind. She heard them before she saw them. In the darkness, the grass trembled under calculated silent steps. The hyenas came closer. Far from the image of mere scavengers, they were true hunters, patient and organized. Their silhouettes gradually emerged. Their eyes reflected the moon. Their paws glided silently over the earth. They fanned out in a semicircle, slowly closing in on her, not hastily, but with the relentless certainty of predators who know how to wait. The female elephant, separated from her herd, understood that there would be neither reinforcement nor refuge. Her solitude was her judgment, and yet a primal instinct drove her to stand firm. She straightened up, letting out a low rumble, more to encourage herself than to intimidate the enemy. The hyenas, however, were not impressed. They circled her, reading her insecurities from her posture, noticing every flicker of hesitation. They knew. They had understood that this full belly turned strength into weakness, that the burden of motherhood made her more vulnerable. The leader of the pack, a female with scarred fur and a torn ear, stepped forward slowly. Head lowered, shoulders rolling under taut skin, she tested the massive cow's defenses. Behind her, the other hyenas glided through tufts of grass, disappearing and reappearing like ghosts. The female elephant turned suddenly. Her massive body displaced the air with force. Her tusks gleamed for a moment in the moonlight, ready to strike. A fragile balance was struck. Predator and prey frozen in a silent duel. The first attack came from the right. A hyena sprang forward with its mouth wide open. The elephant's trunk swept down like an acacia branch, hitting the attacker's shoulder with a sharp crack. A scream cut through the darkness, immediately stifled. But another figure from the opposite side was already rushing in, feinting to distract her. The female elephant's breathing accelerated, her flanks trembling with exertion. Every movement cost her more strength. The hyenas cleverly tightened the circle. Their patience, sharpened by night hunts, would ultimately wear her down. The leader stepped forward again, her eyes not on the head or tusks, but on the cow's heavy flanks. She knew that was the weak point. The elephant turned and lashed out, but her fatigue was growing. Her ears flapped faster, her breathing became a whistle. Then, a cracking sound behind her broke the rhythm of this duel. It was not a hyena. The ground vibrated, at first barely perceptible, as if the earth itself were holding a heartbeat. The hyenas froze in surprise. The leader raised her head, her ears twitching, but the female elephant stood still. Her entire body tensed, her trunk rose high into the night, and from her throat came a deep, vibrating sound that echoed across the plain. It was not a cry of fear, but a call. A deep, ancient call meant to penetrate the night and reach allied ears. This floating song carried a silent promise, and soon figures emerged from the shadows. 3 massive silhouettes moved forward, lit by the pale moonlight. They were other elephants, old cows, their bodies marked by past battles, their tusks blunted by the years. They walked without haste, yet every step echoed like a threat. Their mere presence changed the atmosphere. The air grew heavier, denser. Even the hyenas, skilled at sniffing out weakness, paused. The leading female elephant, a huge matriarch whose remaining eye glowed amber, positioned herself at the pregnant cow's side. She needed no gesture. Her sheer stature was enough to erect an invisible wall. The hyenas immediately understood that the situation had changed, but hunger is a cruel sting. They did not retreat. They remained, wavering between caution and desire, torn between the fear of the tusks and the smell of the vulnerable prey. The scarred leader narrowed her eyes, fighting the instinct that urged her to flee. A gust of wind made the grass dance and carried the acrid smell of dried blood. A tense silence fell over the plain, as if it too were holding its breath. The pregnant female elephant brushed the matriarch with her trunk, a gesture of both fatigue and trust. Her body trembled, her legs wavered, the calf in her belly stirred under the skin, sensitive to the surrounding chaos. The hyena smelled this new weakness and attempted a swift attack, leaping in from the side. But the matriarch straightened up. Her tusks drew a mighty arc, kicking up a cloud of dust. The hyenas immediately backed away, but their goal was achieved, to steal another piece of precious energy from the giants. The cruel game continued, and the night, an accomplice of the predators, promised to be long. The hyenas had not fled. Their circle, briefly interrupted by the arrival of the other female elephants, slowly reformed. Their crouching silhouettes glided between the stalks. Each one tested the enemy's resilience. The matriarch, massive and one-eyed, moved even closer to the pregnant cow, her flank pressed tightly against her body. Her one remaining eye glowed with a cold light. She knew that stamina would decide the outcome, and that time was rarely on the side of those who carried such a burden. The pregnant cow's breathing became hurried. Her legs trembled, her belly contracted painfully. The young one inside her moved under the skin, as if sensing the danger. The hyenas felt this weakness, and two of them sprang forward as an advance guard. The matriarch reacted immediately, sweeping up a cloud of dust with her trunk. The attackers backed away, but not far. Every attack stole a little more energy from the group. The hyena leader, the scarred one with the torn ear, watched patiently. She knew that exhaustion would eventually break their defenses. Suddenly, the ground trembled with a steady pulsation. Not a light step, not a distant roar. It was deeper, more primal. The earth itself seemed to be shaking. The hyenas froze. The matriarch raised her head, her ears turned toward the horizon. A metallic smell hung in the air, a promise of rain mixed with dust. Then a figure emerged. A huge, solitary bull pushed his way out of the grass. His uneven tusks shone in the moonlight. One was blunt, the other curved like a sickle. Scars marked his skin, silent testimonies of past battles. He did not belong to the herd. His arrival was no accident. The matriarch let out a deep rumble, almost a challenge. The bull stood still, his eyes sweeping over the scene. The exhausted cow, the hyenas in a semicircle, the small group of defensive cows. He remained motionless. His trunk slowly swept through the dust. In the silent language of pachyderms, this silence was a riddle. Was he a protector, an opportunist, or just a witness? The hyenas immediately sensed the uncertainty. Their leader took a step forward, her yellow eyes fixed on the prey. A guttural growl gave the signal. The circle tightened. Two hyenas sprang toward the hindquarters of the pregnant cow. She tried to turn, but her heavy belly slowed her every movement. With a kick, she flung a hyena into the dust, but the blow tore a gasp from her. Her flanks rose and fell in rough heaves. The matriarch rushed over, her tusks whistling through the air, but the balance was already tilting. The bull remained still, an unmoving observer, as if he were weighing the price of his intervention. This wordless stillness cooled the air more surely than a scream. Then a new sound cut through the night, high-pitched, shrill, desperate. Not a roar, not the call of an adult elephant, but the trumpet blast of a little one, trembling and urgent. The hyenas paused. The bull turned his head. Even the matriarch hesitated. The call was repeated, closer now, accompanied by the hurried pounding of small feet. The stalks parted abruptly, and a young elephant burst out, covered in dust, its eyes wide with fear. It ran directly toward the pregnant cow, guided by the instinct for refuge. Its small trunk swung around, searching, as if to find a familiar closeness. The danger immediately doubled. The matriarch tried to block the way, afraid that the little one would break their formation. But it clung to her leg, whimpering, unable to understand. The hyenas smelled their opportunity. The leader let out another guttural command. The pack stormed forward. The ground shook under their leaps. Dust swirled up. The attack was fierce. The matriarch lashed out widely. Her tusks threw two hyenas to the ground, but three others were already rushing toward the young one. Then the bull charged. His mass sliced through the air like a thunderclap. His tusks struck with unimaginable force. A hyena yelped, pierced. It staggered back with a bleeding flank wound. The attack shattered the pack in a matter of seconds. Dust swirled, screams mixed with trumpet blasts. But the pregnant cow, forced by the chaos to turn abruptly to get the little one between her legs, suddenly felt a dull pain in her belly. Her breathing became a gasp, a whistle. The young one within her bucked, shaken by the raging battle. The struggle continued, tangled and oppressive. The hyenas backed away, came back, and mercilessly continued their mobbing. The bull drew wide arcs to keep them away. The matriarch held the center, but exhaustion was gnawing at them. The young elephant, panicked, clung to her leg. Its cries cut through the night. The smell of blood and sweat filled the air. Then the wind suddenly shifted, and it carried an even heavier scent. No longer just that of predators, but of a greater, more relentless threat. A deceptive silence fell over the savanna, as if the entire plain were holding its breath. The hyenas, who had been circling with methodical patience, fell silent in their growling. They stood motionless, ears pricked, their yellow eyes reflecting slivers of moonlight. Their leader, with the torn ear, took a step forward, but her gaze was no longer on the pregnant cow. It searched the horizon, for the air had changed. It now carried a heavy, metallic, almost biting smell that covered the scent of blood and dust. The matriarch jerkily raised her trunk and swung it through the charged air. Her single eye narrowed. She had understood before anyone else. Something was approaching, greater than the greedy predators and older than their rivalries. A flash of lightning split the sky, revealing the scene in stark light. For a heartbeat, every silhouette was sharply etched into the night. The exhausted cow, whose flanks trembled from the exertion. The little one pressed against the matriarch, trembling yet steadfast. The bull in the background, his scarred body like a silent bulwark. And the pack, frozen, wavering between prey and the unknown. Then darkness swallowed the plain again. A rumble rolled across the sky, followed by another deeper, duller one that came from below. It was not just thunder, it was a relentless roar, a force rolling in, and the earth was already vibrating under their feet. The matriarch understood immediately. She let out a deep call, an ancient command passed down from generation to generation. With a mighty gesture, she pressed her shoulder against the pregnant cow, urging her to go. The response was labored. The nearly exhausted cow managed to lift her heavy legs, each one weighted with stone. Her hoarse breath cut through the night. The little one clung to her flank, instinctively finding protection in her mass. The bull, after a brief hesitation, moved back to cover the retreat. His role was to be the rear guard, to intercept anything that dared to approach from behind. The hyenas understood as well. Their ears turned to the east, their nostrils quivering. What was coming was not an enemy that could be bitten or worn down. It was the flood, a blind force that swept away prey and hunters alike. Their muscles, tensed for attack, relaxed. The smell of water rose, of damp dust and iron. Hunger screamed for them to stay, but the stronger instinct commanded flight. The leader hesitated for a moment, her eyes fixed on the cow, so close and vulnerable. Then a new flash of lightning lit up the horizon, and the wave revealed itself. A liquid wall ate its way across the plain, swallowing grass and gullies. The roar of the torrent drowned out even the cries of the wind. Then the hyena leader sprang back, pulling the others with her in flight. They disappeared into the grass, swallowed by the darkness, giving up the fight. For the elephants, there was no stopping. The matriarch led them onward, guiding the group to a rocky ridge. Every step was a struggle. The rain suddenly poured down. Heavy drops hit the earth like stones. The dust turned to mud, making the march even more difficult. The pregnant cow bent, but she did not break. Her gasping breath marked the rhythm of their progress like a drumbeat. The young one inside her bucked, shaken by the external chaos. Her flanks contracted in waves, yet she kept going, her gaze fixed on the comforting figure of the matriarch. The bull covered the rear, taking heavy steps, his tusks raised. The young elephant calf stumbled often, its small legs slipping in the mud, but the cow slowed her pace so it could cling to her. The roar of the water swelled, so loud that it filled their chests. Every second gained was a victory. Every meter fought for was a reprieve. Finally, they reached the plateau, an elevated rocky outcrop that overlooked the plain. At that very moment, the torrent broke loose below them. In the white light of a flash of lightning, the savannah disappeared under a raging sea. Grass, dry wood, dry gullies, all swallowed in the incessant roar. The force of the improvised river consumed the landscape, tearing away earth, erasing every trace of the struggle. Down there, where the hyenas had scattered, only drowned shadows remained. The elephants held together. The bull, positioned at the end, braced his massive body against the wind. The matriarch in the center once again pressed her shoulder against the pregnant cow, as if to say, "Hold on." The pregnant cow tilted her head slightly, her eyes half closed, but her legs planted firmly in the ground. The young one, snuggled against her, found the protection in her trembling flanks that it had never known. The rain washed away the dust and blood, drawing gleaming streams across their skin. Below them, the flood continued to rage, consuming the savannah. But on this rain-swept ridge, there was more than just flight. There was the fragile promise of survival. Despite all of her fatigue, the pregnant cow raised her trunk and let out a deep call. It was not a cry of despair. It was a proclamation, a challenge to the storm. She was still standing. Slowly, dawn rose over a transformed savannah. The storm-filled night had marked the landscape. Where dry, cracked expanses had lain the day before, raging streams had now carved new scars into the earth. Puddles reflected the first rays of light, and every blade of grass, wet with drops, glittered like delicate embroidery. But despite this fragile beauty, chaos still rained down in the valley. The flooded plain rolled with muddy waves that carried away branches, carcasses, and the extinguished memories of the night. The roar of the flood, now distant, sounded like a permanent warning. On the rocky outcrop, the elephants stayed together. The matriarch, upright, unwavering, remained the guardian. Her single eye, gleaming in the rising light, pierced the horizons. The scars on her body, washed by the rain, shone like sacred marks. By her side stood the great, solitary bull. He was not of her blood, and yet he had stayed. His massive body, marked by old battles, still towered like a wall. His silent presence seemed to have sealed his place among them, at least for this suspended moment. But everyone's attention was on the pregnant cow. Her whole body was shaking. Her flanks contracted in waves. Her trunk beat the ground in time, as if to fight a pain that had become unbearable. Her legs almost buckled, but she held her ground. Her gasping breath tore through the air. Every exhale was a sign of the end, every inhale a sign of resistance. The matriarch stepped forward and placed her rough trunk on the other elephant's shoulder, a gesture of both authority and support. She knew what was coming. The battle against hyenas and the flood was nothing compared to this. Giving life required the greatest courage. The elephant calf, who had survived the night, trembling but unyielding, snuggled close to her. Its young eyes held the cow fast, as if she had become its mother. In its innocence, it did not sense the gravity of the moment. It only sought warmth and protection. And yet, when its bright cry answered the cow's deep bellow, an invisible bond seemed to form. This young one, who had fled the night and was abandoned, found a figure to cling to in this mother on the verge of collapse. Fate had brought them together through fear and chance, but the storm had turned chance into a necessity. The tension was rising. The wind had died down, the rain had become a fine drizzle, but the sky seemed to be holding still. Even the birds did not dare to sing. The entire savannah seemed to hold its breath, as if it were sharing in the expectation. The cow swayed, buckled, and then, with titanic strength, straightened up again. Her whole body arched, her muscles trembled, and suddenly, in a primeval scream, life burst forth. A small elephant calf slid to the ground, wet, fragile. Its first gasping breaths mingled with the sounds of the morning. Its still soft legs tried to unfold beneath it. A new miracle was born. The mother, exhausted, almost collapsed, but her instinct took over. She turned and stroked her newborn with her trembling trunk. Her half-closed, tired eyes shone with a new light, a mixture of relief and love. The little one tried to stand clumsily, fell, and got up again. A tiny but crucial struggle. By its side, the orphan calf came closer, curious. and placed its small trunk on the newborn's still wet forehead. In this fragile touch, an unlikely siblinghood was born. Two lives, one saved from fear, the other born in pain, had found each other. The matriarch watched motionless, as if captivated by the solemnity of the moment. Slowly she raised her trunk and let out a deep call, an ancient song, carried by the echo of the hills. The bull, standing slightly apart, answered. His deep trumpeting made the air tremble, mingling with that of the old leader. Together they announced to the savannah that despite predators, despite the storm, despite the flood, life had triumphed. Their voices echoed like a prayer of victory, a hymn to survival. The sun, finally breaking through the clouds, poured golden rays that enveloped the group. The rain weakened to a light mist. The air, still filled with moisture, vibrated with new energy. The mother, swaying but standing, now protected two young ones, the one she had just given birth to, and the orphaned calf that the night had entrusted to her. Their tiny bodies pressed against her legs, seeking warmth and security. Their high-pitched cries answered in echo to the deep calls of the old ones. Down in the valley, the destruction remained visible. Uprooted trees, mud, the silence of drowned scavengers. But on the rocky outcrop, there was neither defeat nor despair. There stood a circle of elephants, a one-eyed matriarch, a scarred bull, an exhausted but victorious mother, and two new beings, fragile and radiant, who already carried the future. The storm had failed, hunger had failed, the flood had failed.